and Issues, a podcast where we do in-depth discussions on a single comic book. I am the god of naps, Jonah Gregory. With me, as always, my co-host, Karen Bennett.
This comic has buff dudes and people swinging hammers, and by Odin's beard, I have not had my fill of either.
And a returning guest host, Tim Lanning of Pope Zone and
pretty much just that. Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be here. As you know, I being on the Pope Zone, I'm an expert in gods and godlike things. So discussing Thor and the Thor comic in which gods die, I feel like that was just, you know, my calling, so to speak.
Yeah, I can understand why you picked this one.
Yeah. So, it's actually really surprising that Jude Law shows up halfway through, which, you know, obviously ties back to the Pope.
When Thor gets that kangaroo to really save the day, golly geez, I thought that part was neat.
It was good.
Yeah.
So if we haven't said it yet, we are going to be talking about Thor, God of Thunder today, which is the
God Butcher.
Yeah, Volume 1, The God Butcher. And this comic is the one that started a few years ago. I assume still ongoing, but it's Marvel, so big question mark from me on that one.
So, after I guested it the first time for the Wayward episode, I kind of credit y'all with me having like a temporary Comixology Unlimited subscription or whatever, which I just realized today I probably still have, and I don't know if I'm paying for it, but I have it. So I don't think they give things.
It's cheap enough that if you haven't been keeping up on it, you've probably been charged and didn't even notice because it's like $6 or something.
Oh, okay, so. Well, I'm a GD fool, but after reading Wayward, I was like, you know what? Reading comic books is fun. I like this.
It is,
and I forget what I read after that, but. I read a lot of the Battle World books of Marvel, the ones where Doctor Doom like creates a weird perfect world. They're really good. And that made me enjoy a certain artist by the name of Assad Ribic. I believe that's the correct person's name. Yes, The Secret Wars is what I was referring to.
Oh yeah,
just the way that they do like kind of like reaction shots, panels. Mr. Sinister is like a sidekick of Doctor Doom in this version of the Secret Wars, and there's so many just like large panels that are all completely white with Mr. Sinister's framing and just like what, as silly as it sounds, HD comic book blaring at me from my iPad, and and with the Comixology guided view thing, it was super rad because it got like zoomed way in, and between is Doctor Strange in that one? I think he is, and
I would imagine so.
Mr. Fantastic and all, like zooming way in into all of them. It was a great way to kind of see emotions, and as a baby comic book reader, I really appreciated it. Fast forward to me reading all those, which was fun, and asking sort of like, what's a good, you know, Thor book or something? Because I wanted to read something basic. And Kieran suggested Lady Thor. I think that's Thor the Unworthy or something like that. I forget which it's called. And that takes place like 4 years comic time after this one. Me being a fool, I was like, well, I gotta figure out what happens. I don't understand why Jane has cancer, so I'm gonna go back and whatever. And so I haven't caught up to Lady Thor yet, but basically I jumped all the way back to this one from 2013 in order to get a better idea. And not in this issue. I think in the interstitial between the this arc and the next one, he goes to Earth and talks to Jane, and you kind of get an idea of what's going on there. But it was you know, kind of that basic thing of seeing, here's an artist I like, and here's a basic character that is one of the most popular ones. And I was just like, you know what? I want to read one of the top heroes, you know, one of your Spider-Mans. So because I was like bouncing around Spider-Man. I didn't really want to read Iron Man. It was either Spider-Man or Thor, and I think Kieran recommended Thor. So I was like, all right, here we go.
As we all know, he hates Spider-Man.
He hates Spider-Man. He said Spider-Man sucks.
He's in the J. Jonah Jameson camp.
The only Spider-Man comic that I've actually read a lot of is One More Day, which is, I mean, it's special. You know, it's got a place in my heart.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but I think, as I said on the Wayward one, I could never figure out how to read comics because there's just so much to them. So like when I read the Secret War stuff, there was a good recaps online that were like, hey, these are the 25 that are good. Yeah. Here's the 8 that are core. Here's the 12 that lead into this. Here's the 9 that don't lead into that, but they kind of give little peppers and they're fun to read by themselves. And Lady Thor, has like this arc leads into Uatu the Watcher arc. That was a big deal. And then Uatu the Watcher leads into Lady Thor. So I was like, all right, got to start back. And it was a joy because, this comic is good. And it works out that way.
Spoiler.
Please bury the lead. Thanks for listening, everybody. Come next time.
Sorry for talking so much there. I just wanted to really just say how much how basic I am and how much I enjoyed the art, and that made me like it more. Which I don't know how that affects real comic book readers, but when I read the Infinity Gauntlet book, I was like, wow, this must have been made in the 40s or something. It wasn't. Yeah.
It was the pre-digital art age, so it's definitely its own thing. Like if people aren't used to it, I could see how it would be very jarring to go back to.
It was retro. It was like playing a Game Boy or whatever. Yeah.
It actually, I think older stuff like that does work better physically in your hand because that's what it was drawn for.
Yeah.
And reading them digitally always feels kind of wrong to me because I've read a lot of those before and then I read them on my phone and I'm like, something feels off about this. I think it's like you were saying, the HD, like, quality of newer stuff being digital art. You can zoom way in and stuff like that.
And especially guided view that will take like the top third of like an action panel that might have someone crashing through 3 asteroids and will like zoom in on each asteroid and then zoom out on that entire panel. So like 1/3 of the page will get like 5 different guided view shots or whatever like that.
I think Comixology their app is still my favorite for reading comics. I've tried a few other ones and I think their guided view works the best out of all the ones I've tried.
Yeah, I tried to read a manga on theirs, Delicious in Dungeon, and it didn't have guided view, and I'm like,
oh no.
I can't, I mean, I'm so basic. There's probably another word, casual. Is there a comic book version of that? Is it not basic, but casual, scrub?
No, it's good. We don't gatekeep here on the show because
good
gatekeepers are asses and we hate them. So
I guess you're right. Those are all gatekeeping terms.
Yeah. So I'm if I can get someone who doesn't normally read comics to read a book and enjoy it, then that's a win for me. Because
I like the pretty pictures.
Yeah, I'm not super hardcore about it. Like, this basically started as an excuse for us to read more comics and then have an outlet to discuss them.
Yeah.
So, that's why a lot of times we'll be picking stuff that we never got a chance to go read in the first place.
Yeah. So you hear that, kids? If you like something and you want to do more of it, just do a podcast.
Yeah. Or, like, share it with your friends instead of being like, you've never read Spider-Man number 237?
Yeah, there's no need to have hobbies that you can't turn into content.
Exactly.
Exactly. Because are you ever doing something if you're not doing it for people online for no money?
Patreon.com/InksAndIssues is what I'm trying to tell you. Get us to the Garfcast and we will even have more podcasting for you. That's all I'm saying.
As of recording, how close are y'all?
Not close at all. So we need some support from people.
Well, you've promised them such a cursed thing. I'm sure it's bittersweet.
Well, there's some other goals between here and there that I think people will enjoy. Well, we'd like to have an excuse to stream when we record. So that would go towards getting us to that too.
Yeah.
So,
I know that I do another podcast called Drunks Dragons,
Whoa.
and
What?
the audience loves when we're upset and sad. So I can definitely see people wanting you to ruin your body upon the Garfield altar.
Yeah.
So
you're saying we might have to do more One More Day style hate
you know what you should do?
recordings.
You can cut this out. Actually, you know how like right of first refusal or like edit, what's the opposite? You're not allowed to cut this out. If you get there by the end of 2018, you should each promise to get Garfield tattoos.
Oh boy.
It doesn't have to be big. It could be, tiny. It could even be like, I don't know, like a phrase. It could be like esoteric. That's what I'm saying, That's what I'm saying.
Just a normal on that.
Yes,
Yeah, I was going to say mine would be something about like justice for Lyman or something like
Justice
that.
for Lyman.
Yeah, because no one would know what the hell I'm talking about unless they're hardcore Garf fans like us. So
just get
saying,
Garf and then Field somehow
Yes.
written on your other knuckles.
yeah. I mean, we all know that John killed Lyman so that he could steal Odie. So yeah, that's where that is. So hey, Kieran, did you read anything interesting between last episode and now?
What was the last episode?
You were reading Chew, but I don't know if you read anything else.
No,
you're trying to finish Chew, right? You're like near the end. You have the last few on your
Yeah. So I'm
now.
out to I had to go back and do a bit of a reread. So I'm now on volume 8 of Chew. And yeah, it's a really, really good series. Cool. I would totally recommend going and checking out. I mean, assuming that you like go and listen to our review, obviously.
Yes,
for the first
we
one.
do have some caveats there.
Yeah, patreon.com/issues. Give me $2. And if you enjoy the first volume, honestly, just continue because I think like as it goes on, it gets more and more buck wild. Like, I can almost imagine someone going up to the writer whose name totally escapes me at the moment. I think his name's Rob. And just being like, oh, I really heard about your little comic book Chew. Shame it's just a normal police procedural. And then he just like goes home, the lightning's flashing in the background, and he's just like gripping pages on his desk, being like, I'll show them all police procedural. And he flips the whole desk, and then he just writes the most fucking like banana pants story that he can possibly conceive of in his entire life. It's very weird and it is very, very good. And I would 100% recommend it. So,
yeah, I need to get more of it. One volume was not enough.
That's pretty much what I've been reading.
Yeah. One was not enough. I need to keep going on that one.
People have recommended that one before. It's like,
put it on your list.
I would recommend that for you. I think you would really like it.
Yeah,
actually.
it's out there in a good way. Yeah, I just picked up the first issue of the Mystery Science Theater comic, which I guess Joel Hodgson, the show creator, was saying something he's always kind of wanted to do.
That's cool.
And they just have never had a good way to do it. So I think it's actually written by some of the writing team from the new episodes. And like the way they're doing it is it's because, normally if you're not familiar, they watch a movie and make fun of it. So in this, they're like... They came up with, a plot reason why they could like get pulled into comic books and riff them. So they use the new technology, which is like this bubbly liquid goo stuff that's in the new season. And it's been modified for comics so that they can like get absorbed into different comics and then riff them. And some of them turn into actual characters within the comic, and some of them turn into just like where they just appear and like make a comment and stuff. So
are the comics real?
They are real public domain comics that they found. So there was no rights to them to clear. But they drew in like the one they get sucked into is like some teen detective thing. And the first part of the story is like this actress who like fakes her own kidnapping for publicity. And it's just like, it's really bizarre. But like Tom Servo, who's the one with the gumball machine head, is like sucked into it, and he's like the main character. So he's like drawn, his like bubblegum machine head is drawn on top of like the normal character's head. It's really out there, but I'm enjoying it. I'm not quite done because I was trying to get through all of Thor before we recorded, and we were kind of getting short on time tonight. So I read like the first half, and it's weird, but like it's fun weird. So if you like that show, it's like it'd be in your wheelhouse. But it's not one of those like, when they try and adapt a show to a comic and it's just doesn't work. It's like they actually found a weird ass way to make it fit the show of them riffing stuff, which is just bizarre. Like, I never thought that would work when they announced it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to buy it because it's me and it's Mystery Science Theater. But like, I did not know how they were going to pull it off.
Yeah, that's very strange sounding.
Yeah, it is very bizarre, but I'm enjoying it. I want to actually get a physical copy too, though. I just wasn't sure if it's one my local store would have copies of, so I went ahead and Comixology'd it until I get a chance to actually go to my comic book store and see if they have. And hopefully they had some really cool alternate covers, so if they have any of those, I might grab them and frame them because they were like amazing artwork from different artists. So yeah, I would, if you like the show, I would check it out because it's in the same style of humor, but in obviously a different format. So yeah, that's pretty good. But I guess we should probably get into this Thor I keep hearing so much about.
Oh, I'd love to, if you know what I mean.
Hey, Kieran, did you find any fun facts for us on this one? Because I know it was kind of hard to search.
No.
Yeah, because I was trying to search for some stuff, and I was like getting the video game, which was also called God of Thunder, from like when, I don't know if it was when the first or second Thor movie came out.
I think it's from the first movie.
Yeah. It's it was kind of hard to track down stuff specifically about this one.
Yeah. Also, I've been working a lot, and we had a lot of comic to read, so
it's true. It's
sorry,
very true.
Noel.
Damn.
I've disappointed you.
Yep. So I guess we'll just get into it then. This one is written by Jason Aaron. Artist was Asad Ribic, and let's see, it had cover art by Asad Ribic as well, which that's not always the case. Sometimes they get other artists and stuff, so that's kind of cool. It just shows you his skill level pretty dang high. I actually really loved the art in this book. So
he's very good.
Yeah. Letterer VC, it says VC's Joe Sabino. I don't know what that means, but it sounds good. Assistant. And then I'm just trying to list some, like, giving credit where credit's due. We're trying to be better about that.
For sure, you got to.
Editors on this were Lauren Sankovich and assistant editor Jake Thomas. So that's where we're at for Volume 1, which, if we didn't say, is The God Butcher, which is a badass name to start out with, by the way.
Yeah.
So before we get into this, we're going to try something a little different. And Kieran,
I hate change.
Change based on listener feedback, being Tim. We're going to jump in and give a little synopsis of the series before we start, because that way, if people want to kind of know what it's about before they decide if they want to dive into spoiler territory, here's your chance. So Kieran, why don't you give us a quick rundown of what this comic is about?
All right, so this is Thor back from 2013. In the distant past, Thor follows the bloody wake of murdered gods. In the present, the Thunder God discovers a forgotten cave that echoes with the cries of tortured gods. And thousands of years from now, the last god king of a ruined Asgard makes his final stand against the God Butcher's berserker legions. As three Thors from three eras race to stop the God Butcher, the full extent of his vicious scheme takes terrifying shape. What the hell?
Wow.
Very epic story.
Yes. Well done.
Thank you.
So, with that out of the way, I guess we'll get into it. So it opens up in 893 AD in Ireland, the west coast of Ireland, Iceland.
I was like, wait a second.
I misspoke. I'm so
I gotta
sorry.
reread the whole thing because I had a
Reread the whole
completely
thing.
different
He's hanging
mind.
out with some Celtics guys, and they're all having a party. No, sorry, I misspoke. I meant Iceland.
Classic Viking country of Ireland.
Ireland. Yeah.
Maybe it's because I am half Irish, so I was a little biased, and I was like, "Yeah,
No
Thor
need to
can come
brag.
party with us. Come on." So it post a giant battle, and Thor and all his buddies, all his Viking pals, are just having a big old orgy, drinking. Just having a good old time.
And this is way back in the past. So this is like
way back.
Thor, who is several thousand years old, I think, in the comic book version, is like, I'm going back to Earth to fuck and fight. Hell yeah, baby.
Yeah. This is pre even having his hammer. Like, he's not even worthy to hold the hammer yet. He has a sweet axe that at one point they said it takes like 4 guys to lift.
Yeah. He doesn't have the stereotypical fun hat or anything like that. He has the cool shirt. and the black and red going on, but no hat and no hammer.
And he's got the hair too, which is
beautiful hair. Yes. So they're all partying and someone runs in and is like, hey, I just found this severed head. That's pretty messed up. And turns out it's not just any head. It's the head of a god, which is also very messed up. So, they're like, hey, what could have done this? But they're like, there's no scratch marks or anything like that. So he's like, this guy was butchered. Like his head was cut clean off. So
he looks at the camera and he goes, this guy was God butchered.
Exactly. And it zoomed in on him.
Yeah.
Cruising through the sky. It's Thor.
Yeah. And
Thor. And
he finds an old lady who's praying about, because she's, clearly upset that this god was able to be butchered. And he asks who you praying to.
And
hey,
then
lady.
she looks at the camera and she said, I'm sad that this god was butchered.
Yes.
And they do it 45 more times. A lot of gods die in this thing. And every time a god dies, they always look at the camera and say, it's really annoying.
Mm-hmm.
It's very irritating.
I'm just kidding.
And, so she says she's praying to all the gods. So that's a pretty powerful prayer.
Damn.
It's got to take a while. But
it's a good prologue. Like,
we cut to present day in deep space on a planet Indigar, which I had never heard of.
You have it? Interesting.
No, I know. It's weird. Like
I thought you liked comic books.
The Marvel Universe took
a fake comic book fan then. Interesting.
Fake fan. And a civilization is on the brink of basically completely dying out because their planet is kind of turned into a dried wasteland, and this young girl is praying, which they've never really
global warming
prayed.
Isn't real, right?
She's like, I've never prayed before, but if anyone's out there, we could really use a hand right now. And then it starts raining and Thor drops in and he's like, hey, what's up? I can make thunder and crap. It's great.
I'm here to defeat the conspiracy by the Chinese.
So he talks to the civilization and is like, hey, where's your gods? They should be over here helping you. And they're like, gods, what's that? But he finds an old guy who's like, hey, we did have gods at some point, but like it was so long ago, none of these young whippersnappers even know like the history of them or anything because they abandoned us. So everyone kind of became super atheists and
this is what happens when your society becomes atheists, y'all. It turns to deserts and you die.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that happens. I'm sorry to tell you.
That does happen.
You heard it here first.
Checkmate, atheists.
But he gets really pissed off because, he's a god, and Thor, he's got his problems, but he more often than not just likes to help people out. So he flies up into space, and this is present day Thor. So this is Avenger Thor. They call him several times throughout this.
He has hat. He has hammer.
He has hat, hammer, sweet pants, metal pants, I think. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what they look like.
Big cape.
Yeah. No beard, but still,
We'll get there.
But he flies up to the home of these gods who have abandoned the people and finds their giant space palace abandoned. He's like, that's really weird. So he's looking around and finds this huge ass door that's all chained up and is able to smash it open because, he's Thor. Mm-hmm. Chains aren't going to stop him.
Obviously.
Except for when they do later. And when he opens it up, he finds these gigantic, like 20-foot tall gods who are all butchered by some sort of god butcher. And they're like hanging on meat hooks. It's really gross.
Yeah. I was surprised by how gory parts of this
same.
was.
Yeah. It's very surprising.
So he flies around their little like tomb thing and finds all these different ones where he's like, wait a minute, these guys were butchered. He puts on his sunglasses and said butchered. And but he also mentions how like god flesh doesn't really decay quickly. Like they could be there for thousands of years and they wouldn't really look that different since they were formerly immortal beings, which, immortality, I guess you're only immortal unless you get killed by somebody. Is that how that works?
Yeah, that's like the classic elf situation. They don't age. They don't get sick, but they can be murdered. Yeah, I think it's the difference between immortal and like omnipotent. Or whatever.
Right. That's true. But while he's checking things out, he suddenly gets attacked by this huge beast, and it's actually a pretty sweet looking creature because it's just completely black from head to toe, where it's like almost like a shadow. but it can kind of like pull swords out of nowhere and stuff. Because it kind of reminded me of like, I was almost like, wait, is there going to be some sort of Venom suit related symbiote type creature involved in this story
That
arc?
would have been dope as hell.
And it's similar, but not really, but it does remind me of that. Where there's like lots of like strands of like shadowy stuff coming off of him and all this crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like a super tough beast. Like Thor smashes it in the face and it doesn't go down after only one hit, like pretty much most things do. So he's like, well, this is not good. He's like, if I don't stop whatever's causing all this stuff, then, you know, that's not going to be good for any of the gods, because he's like, wait a minute, this guy Gore the God Butcher must still be alive.
What?
So you're like, what? Who's that guy he's talking about?
What?
I know, but then we cut to super far in the future, many millennia from now, in the Great Hall of Asgard, and we see old man Thor, who looks like Odin at this point.
Yeah,
he's got a robo arm. He's got a sword and his hammer, so you know he's really getting his weapons.
He's ready
on.
to fuck some shit up.
Yeah, and he has an Odin style eye patch, and I think his arm is that like big robot thing that is famous.
The Destroyer.
Destroyer, yeah,
it's in the first movie.
The Destroyer, that's right.
Yeah. Which I didn't make that connection till later when one of the, like, someone mentions it by name. Like, your arm is that guy. And then I was like, oh, it all comes together.
Okay.
But yeah, we kind of find out that, Asgard has been under siege, and it's just like a endless army of those black berserker things that he was fighting earlier.
Yeah.
And he goes out to face them all, and that's where the first issue ends. And I have to say, my first impression was I am 100% already on board with this book. Like, it did not take much for this one to start kicking ass immediately.
Yeah. Do y'all like books that have time travel?
Yes. Have you met me?
Yeah.
I know that when I first started, it was like a little like the mixture of reading a Marvel thing that not only is like, oh yeah, gods are real, like just like Thor is, but there's like thousands of them, and they go deep into space and all this other stuff. And on top of that, there's like time travel, and there's literally 3 Thors. I was like intrigued to see how they're gonna make it all work, keep all those plates spinning, but also being like, is this gonna be like too much bullshit to deal with? I don't know. But it was drawn well enough and written well enough, and didn't give too much away. Like, cause the whole thing is basically like, and then I remembered something that happened, and then, I'm sure I'll finish this, and nothing will be bad, and I won't lose an arm and be surrounded in the future. And then, plus old Thor looks so goddamn cool.
Yeah. He's finally got a sweet beard.
Yeah.
Which is what we all aspire to someday.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's my goal. Yeah. I'd say like this, the whole kind of like theme that they're going for, like the sort of the aesthetic of the story, where it's like, come dogs, there is still one god left on Asgard, and he would have words with thee. Whatever happens now, whatever my fate, know that I face it like a god. I mean, like, I lap that shit up so fucking hard. So, from pretty much the first few pages, I was way into this. Just because of like that whole, like, very, I mean, I guess I'll spoil it now. If you're not a fan of like that real epic style fantasy, literally just go and read anything else, because this is not the comic for you.
Yeah.
This is very like sword and sorcery epic battle.
I was gonna save it, but I guess I'll just say it now. The thing this most reminded me of is the Conan book that we reviewed a while ago.
Yes,
it's
it reminds
like
me a lot
Conan,
of Conan,
except with gods and space and stuff, and time travel, but
and
like
Iron Man pops up for a second.
Very similar. I mean, Conan has gods and stuff.
Is Iron Man and Conan too? Or?
I mean, Wonder Woman meets Conan at some point, so I mean, I guess they could cross over.
I like that. Yeah, it's also cool too because each Thor is like their own character, and
they're very different.
It's you can see character growth or whatever the version of growth where they become worse. Like immediately, with grumpy old Thor, which he has reason to be grumpy. I'm not throwing shade on my man, but it's just like such an interesting vibe of specifically young Thor, who's such a dipshit. And
I love him though.
Yeah, he's very good. And I'll call him Vanilla Thor, who's just like
I was calling him Conan Thor when I was reading this. That's how I was keeping him straight. Conan Thor, Avengers Thor, and Odin Thor were the three Thors in my head.
that makes sense, and I think is correct. But yeah, no, it's just such a fun thing it's like a kind of a gift, I assume, for a writer that is obsessed with these characters to be able to have that playground.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Kieran, you want to take issue 2?
I shall.
Issue 2 has an amazing opener that I absolutely loved.
Yeah, so the opener of this one is basically Conan Thor talking about Mjolnir and how like amazing it is, and that only the worthy may lift it. And he's basically like, I can't lift it. And he's like, how, you're so stubborn. How worthy do I have to be to pick this friggin' thing up?
I love how pissed off he gets when he can't pick it up. It's great.
Yeah.
He's like, what more do I have to do? Well, for me, it completely mirrored his like constantly searching for approval from Odin. Like he has to be worthy of the hammer, but to him that more represents like, is he worthy of his father, who never seems to ever approve of what he does?
Hammer is dad.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, the hammer is fatherly love.
Mm-hmm.
We are all Thor.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah,
all right.
No, I'm not. I've never been wrong about anything. And so basically, we get like Avengers Thor fighting and Old Man Thor fighting as well. But in the meantime, Conan Thor is headed across the seas with the Vikings, and he's he's a little bit wigged out by the dead god. And the Vikings are like, nah, don't worry about it. Thor is huge. He's thick as hell, and he's gonna like beat all of our enemies, and we're gonna do really well. And so basically they get to the banks of the Neva River in what will someday be called Russia. And the Slavs are there, and Thor's like, Russian gods come out to play, and they don't. And basically there's like this bloody horse, like a bloodstained white horse. Sorry, Pegasus, not
Thank
a horse.
you.
A Pegasus, I'm so sorry. Basically flies down, and Thor's like, well, I can steal this. And so he flies up into the clouds, and there's another Pegasus coming towards him, and it has a headless rider on it. And he's like, well, that doesn't seem so hot, does it?
No.
And I think this was probably the bit where I was like, oh, this is actually quite well written, because basically talking about like he has like this nagging fear in the back of his head that something is going wrong, and he says like it's the feeling when the beast first realizes it's being hunted, and at this point the head and the legs are cut off the horse, the Pegasus that he's on.
Yeah, I hated
and
that.
it is very graphic.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I hate it. And it also, I did like that it wasn't just like a generic other god. It was like specifically Chernobog, which is like a really famous god. And that was a cool way to tie it into like, hey, these are like, he's part of the pantheon of Norse gods, and the Russian gods have all these other ones that you've probably heard of.
Right. And it wasn't like a made up one that was like a god of something uninteresting. They started off with real god in charge of something dope.
Right. And it's cool too, because you're like, hey, if Thor exists, shouldn't all these other gods exist?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this story kind of explains why they don't.
Yeah.
And so basically, this thing appears out of nowhere, and it's like, I'm gonna cut you up, I'm gonna butcher you. And Thor falls and lands on the black Pegasus of Chernobog, and he's like, we're going to fight now. And so they have this dope ass fight in the air, where they're just like, they're trading blows. And Thor is talking about, this incredibly fucked up person who was, arrested back in the day, who just like killed a bunch of women and children. And he was like, but Poppy, isn't that war? And Odin's like, no, son, that's, he was just a murderer. And so it's like I don't feel like it was really like resolved that well, but it is something that he nevertheless kind of thinks about, like, the nature of killing, I guess.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like war versus murder, I guess, was the whole point.
Yeah.
So they basically continue fighting, and he gets stabbed and cut a lot. He gets knocked off the horse. It is very, very cool. And the God Butcher basically grabs Thor and he's like, "Before I kill you, what are you the god of?" And he's like, "Thunder!" And he then gets blasted by a bolt of lightning, and the two of them fall to the ground.
Yeah.
And so then we cut back to the present?
Yes.
Avenger Thor.
Yes, Avenger Thor.
Yeah, Avenger Thor.
Cool helmet and all.
Cool helmet and all, yes. And so Avenger Thor has just finished destroying the sort of the black berserker thing, the monster that he was fighting, and we kind of get the impression that like it took him a really, really long, I think it says it takes hours.
I got the impression because they wrote the words it took hours to do. That's what, like, I don't know why I thought that, but when it said it took hours to kill it, my assumption was it took hours to kill it.
That's fair. That's what we call reading between the lines.
Okay. I'm new at this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, you are a fake comic book fan, so it's understandable you don't pick these things up. Yeah.
I'm still learning.
Yeah, what happened on page 37 of Superman? I got nothing. Let's keep moving.
He went to the Daily Planet. And
I mean, that's probably true.
That's probably true, yeah.
He slipped on a banana peel.
Mm-hmm. And then Lois laughed at his ding dong.
Yeah, his whole dong fell out.
Who amongst us has not fallen over and had a dong fall out?
Mm-hmm.
Today, I realized that my pants were ripped in the crotch region. And I was like, well, this isn't bad. This isn't good.
So this is the story of how you got fired, I'm guessing.
No, I didn't want to have a second wardrobe malfunction in 3 months, so I just kind of laid low, and then yeah.
Look, I'm sure we've all had to fix our pants with duct tape at work, because that is definitely a thing that happened to me once.
I ripped my pants one time, and I was literally like, "Hey guys, I gotta go." I ripped my pants, and then I put my gym clothes on and left.
Fair. That is fair.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Thigh chafing is the worst because you're like, there's a tiny hole in my pants, and then you go for a walk and you're like, now there's no crotch.
Yeah.
Fuck. there's just no pants anymore. I'm basically wearing crotchless chaps.
Yep. Yeah. Which
Speaking
is nice.
of no pants, I mean, Thor could do with some less pants in these scenes. Am I right?
You are so right.
You're not wrong.
Yeah. This Thor is big. Anyway, try not to think about that too much. Yeah. So basically, Avenger Thor is like, I am going to avenge all these dead gods. I'm gonna destroy the God Butcher, no matter how long it takes. And we get like a brief flash of old man Thor still fighting. So it's like, that's what we like to call foreshadowing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, they do it constantly, where it's like
foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing.
I'm fired, aren't I?
I'm gonna figure this mystery out in 6 hours, and then they just do a quick cut of like, no, you're not, dog. It's gonna take thousands of years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. One of my favorite gags of, like, what was that dumb show with the monkey? I Am Baboon or whatever. I Am Monkey. Yeah. There was one, super funny gag where the baboon was like saying something about how awesome they were at fishing, and then it just like cuts to a year later, and it's like him and his girlfriend, and they're just skeletons sitting by the lake fishing. And then it cuts back like 1 year earlier, and I'm like, oh my god, like, I don't normally like this show, but that was one of the funniest gags I've ever seen on a cartoon.
I don't know what show you're talking about, but
it's like an old Nicktoon or something.
Okay.
It's called I Am Weasel. That's
what it was. That's right. And Baboon was like his rival.
Yeah.
And Worf is the voice of the Weasel, right? The smart one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, no way.
Michael Dorn. Yeah, he's the man. He did a lot of voices. Anywho. Thor.
Anyway, so Thor, in the meantime, has collapsed. Conan Thor is collapsed on the ground as he's kind of beaten from his battle. And that's actually the end of the issue.
And boom.
More.
Well, yeah, there we go.
Boom. End of the issue. What'd you guys think of issue 2?
Oh man, this one hooked me. Like, this whole book was just like had its hooks into me. Like, I couldn't stop reading when I started, except for that I had to because, life. But the first couple issues I kind of blasted through, and then it took me, a few days to get back to. But that was not because I didn't want to keep reading. That was because, the kids just started school and it's kind of been hell as far as scheduling goes lately. So
yeah,
we're getting it figured out. I know these dang kids and their education.
Much like Kieran, I didn't realize that I was at the end of this issue because of how fast I went with it.
Yeah.
The reveal of is it Gorm? Always some of those things where you read it so fast. Gore.
2 R's.
Yeah, Gore.
It's like his design, his thong, his ass,
just hanging out.
Thong.
Yeah. The way that he's like just so angry and beating the shit out of Thor, like from the beginning, it's like immediately interesting. It's kind of interesting because he doesn't like immediately beat Thor. So you're kind of like, what happens from now that allows him to be so much so much stronger to the fact that he can, 1,200 years later, beat the shit out of Thor, or like have a minion that can almost beat the shit out of Thor and things like that.
Right.
Plus the panel where Thor is all bruised and battered, and it's that like very good shit of like, what are you the god of? And he's like whispers thunder, and then the Krakoom happens.
Yeah.
And they both fly over nowhere, and that was great because he looks like he's about to like die, and like, what?
Yeah.
How is that gonna happen? And I read this after I watched Thor Ragnarok, which has a good similar gag. You're not the god of hammer, you're the god of thunder or whatever. And yeah, it was immediately Bone Zone Adventure Town with all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a very similar panel it reminded me of in Kingdom Come, which is like a DC like far future thing where Superman is like pretty much, he's a good guy still, but like he's pretty much invulnerable. And Shazam,
classic Superman.
Like Shazam, I think has gone crazy. I haven't read it in a long time, so I could be totally wrong. But Shazam, when he says it, like a bolt of lightning comes down and it's magic lightning. So it is one of the few things that can hurt Superman. And he's basically like, don't you say it. Don't you say it. And then he does it and it like knocks Superman on his ass for temporarily. But it was a very good scene.
Everyone around is like, oh, he said it. He said it.
He said the thing.
Yeah, it was good. It reminded me of that, which made me happy. I'm like, oh, Kingdom Come, we got to review that sometime because that's a good one. It's a weird ass future. Like, yeah, it's good. It's weird. And the art is Alex Ross, who basically just paints actual people in the poses.
God, he's amazing.
And is like just this insanely good artist. So yeah, you'll have to check that out sometime. But anywho, that isn't Thor. But Superman and Thor should totally hang out because,
they should. This issue was friggin' dope. Gore is really awesome. I found it weird that he was wearing a thong, but I dig it. I respect it.
Even Gore feels like a Conan villain to me. Like the name Gore being like Gorr and him being like this weird beast dude wearing a thong and a cape. I'm like, even he feels like he's straight out of Conan.
Yeah. And as you said before, the Venom stuff, it's like in one panel, it's a thong, it's like a G-string. And in another panel, it's just like pasties to cover up his ass and dong. And so it's like a constantly morphing panty set. And I mean, big mood, great look. I love it. He looks great.
It's 2018. We wear thongs now.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all wearing them now. So
yeah. Personally.
And nothing else. I mean, obviously, that's what you do when you podcast.
Now, if you want to see that, you got to go to patreon.com/Inksedition.
Oh, my God.
And get us streaming.
Yep. Hit that streaming goal.
Yeah, no, this was awesome, and as you said, Tim, that moment where he just like whispers thunder, and there's the massive Krakoom, like it's such a comic book moment where it's like, you know, you really want to just like, oh, it's so good.
And after reading so many Thors trying to get to the mighty Thor, it's like, oh, not only is Krakoom like their onomatopoeia for lightning, that's literally Thor's like special attack. Where they if they're fans, if you're a fan of Thor, I could be totally wrong here, but just from like, I've read a lot of Thor in a short amount of time, and like the percentage of comic books that I've read that are Thor versus not Thor, it's like 20% of the comic books I've read are Thor. You know, they use the Krakoom, as a huge deal. So like, if you're a fan of Thor, when it says the thing, you're like, ah, shit, yeah!
Yeah, it's his version of schnicked from like Wolverine taking his claws out.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's very tropey and good.
I love it. So issue 3, let's jump in.
Issue 3.
So issue 3 opens in a library, so bringing it back down a little bit. Actually, I want to say this library, when it shows the outside of it, looks super dope. It's like this crazy floating building in space, and yeah, it looks really cool.
I cannot emphasize enough just like how positively rock hard I was just like reading the text boxes around this library. It's like, it was built 12 billion years ago after the first great war of the gods, from the rubble of the rock of creation and the embers of the fires that lit the first stars, built by the lords of the dawn, a place where I'm just like, yes, give this to me.
And it's like, meanwhile, like, in the same universe on Earth, Spider-Man and Daredevil are like beating up the Kingpin in his like robot suit, and like Thor is on a 12 billion year old library fighting a god butcher. It's
like why Daredevil, when there's been a few times where they're like, hey, you should join the Avengers, and he's like, nah, dude, I'm just a guy. I'm not fighting these crazy ass gods and stuff. I'm like a dude who's good at karate. But yeah, Thor is talking to this librarian who's like a fairy guy, but like a grumpy old man fairy, which I thought was pretty amazing.
The librarian is very good.
And he's looking for any information on these gods who have vanished over the years, because he knows the butcher's still alive. So now he's like, oh crap, these guys who just like, nobody knows where they went. So a lot of times gods just kind of go, I'm out of here, and they just kind of disappear. Turns out a lot of them may have actually been butchered, and that's why nobody's heard of them. So he's taken to the Hall of the Lost, which is, you know, just a section, books upon books upon books of all these gods who have just kind of vanished over time, where if nobody's heard from them for so many thousands of years, they're just like, they're probably dead. And so he starts kind of doing some detective work, which is not something you see Thor do all that often. And going to some like, even like a fairyland planet that sounds all like super sweet and innocent, but finds like bloody god corpses like nailed to a tree, and you're like, oh man, this guy's hardcore. He's like goes to the frou-frou fairyland sugar coated planet and still murders everybody. Like, that's not cool, man. But he keeps getting attacked by those berserker things. So he's like, okay, this guy left these behind clearly to know, because he knew I'd be finding his trail, essentially. And it's everything from like small ones to this giant ass dragon who he's like, oh man, that guy was like kind of a friend of mine. Yeah. Right. So he says the last time he saw this other god that was his friend was like 1,000 years ago, when they were just kind of passing each other in the spaceways and like waved to each other. But he sees one of the berserkers like crawl out from the corpse, and that kind of is the last straw, where he's like, okay, I'm taking this guy out. I'm not allowing this to happen anymore. I will find him and I will destroy him. And then we cut to old Thor being like, hey, your end is here.
Literally every time they're like, I'm gonna kill you soon, there's like just old Thor getting his ass kicked. Like, no, you're not. No, dummy.
You got a ways to go.
One thing that I thought was interesting about this is Thor was he missed meeting his large dragon friend by just 5 years, which sounds like a long time, but you know, in god time, it might as well be 3 days, you know.
Yeah.
So that's when he gets super pissed, and he's like, you know what? I almost saved my good buddy, as opposed to these other weird people I've only read about. This guy was my bud, and now I'm pissed.
Yeah. He even holds his hammer aloft and is like, God Butcher!
I do love how, like, it's that panel is him being like, come kill Thor if you dare, God Butcher! And it's like, Krakow! And then, like, just the next panel is just him, like, sitting next to a book, just, like, carefully reading again.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so obviously you had your big moment and nothing happened.
And using Mjolnir as a lamp.
Right. That's also very good. And then we get back in the day, Thor, Conan Thor, wakes up and they're still in the what will eventually be Russia area, but he's all bandaged up. Like he actually got his ass pretty thoroughly kicked when he was in that fight, which you don't see happen to Thor all that often, really. And he is summoned by his bros, all the Vikings, and they're like, "Hey, we found this other god that you should probably talk to." And he's been like hacked to pieces, like he's missing his arm, one of his arms, and his legs. And he was formerly the god of the hunt, and sounds like was kind of just left there to kind of be a warning, like, "Hey, I'm still out here, and I'm gonna come for you too." So it's pretty messed up. And he's like, "Hey, I can put you out of your misery," because, like, he doesn't want to just be a god that's bleeding out in the snow, I guess. But whatever.
I'm the god of bleeding.
Call. And back in present day, we get our one and only Avengers cameo, which is Iron Man hanging out with him and helping him find this cave that it's like, there's something about this cave, but he couldn't find it. They kind of keep talking about how their memories get kind of fuzzy because they live forever unless they're murdered. So like that kind of keeps coming up, this whole like, "Hey, do you even remember these people you fought with back in the day that you were always hanging out with?" And he's like, "Well, I kind of remember that we had a good time."
And plus he was drinking constantly, so it all gets a little fuzzy.
Yeah. So, I always kind of enjoy like the justifications that they have in comic books for like, this is why no one can ever remember anything, or this is why the timeline's real fucky. And it's just like, yeah, Thor's had a lot of adventures, and some of it doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's just because he doesn't remember it right, because he's so old. And it's like, yeah, okay, sure, why not?
I'll accept that.
I mean, we don't know. We don't live for thousands of years. I mean, at least I don't. I don't know about you guys, but
I don't remember what I did last month.
I mean,
I'm scratching up on 300 years, so I don't know what you're talking about.
But yeah, so he's helped to find this cave that he's kind of feels drawn to, because he knows, like, doesn't remember exactly what happened, but he knows it's all bad. so he's helped, and then you're like, "Oh, is Iron Man gonna like go in and help him fight this guy?" It's like, no, he's like,
nope, no,
I gotta do this alone, unless you want to stay and help me, because that'd be cool, right? And they're like, "Sorry, you can't afford me," and he flies away.
I have my own book. Goodbye.
Yes. And I'm wondering if there's further adventures between, different books, but if there is, you don't have to have read them to follow what's happening in this one. But you get kind of a cool cut between of like him going into the cave in the past and in the present of like, so you're going to kind of slowly getting revealed, like, here's why this cave was a thing that drew him. But inside in the modern day, he finds this other god who is kind of like, I don't know, like he's gone crazy, or he's gone mad, I guess would be a better way to say that. So he finds this other god in the cave who has clearly gone mad from being tortured and years of being like isolated in this cave. And he tries to get some information out of him. And he's like, "Hey, so the guy wants to kill you last, and everyone's dying because of you, Thor. So now you have to live with that knowledge for all of eternity."
and like that, idiot.
Yeah. But we see the Thor in the future was fighting and like being consumed by darkness, like that venomy stuff that was coming off of him. And also past Thor, Conan Thor, is also being like wrapped up in it as well. So like he's kind of getting his butt kicked by Gore in various timelines.
And even Avengers Thor gets sucked into the goo.
Yeah.
All Thors go into the goo.
Yes. It's not good. But yeah, that's the end of the third issue. But I don't know about you guys, but I'm all 100% was on board at this point.
Yeah.
And ready to go full steam.
At this point, they're just chugging along. It's like it was good. It's still good.
Kieran, more to add, or do you want to just get into number 4?
No, I mean, the story is pretty freaking tight up to this point. I'm just trying to get my comicsology to load.
Oh, that classic chestnut they put into all of our books where they just make comicsology
gag. Yeah. I always get surveys from Comixology being like, hey, you buy a lot of books. What can we do to make it better? And I'm just like, can you make it actually just load the fucking comic that I bought?
Make
please?
it good.
Also, can they add, can you just constantly request that they give you unlimited down there?
Oh my God, yes.
Because it sucks.
I could have gotten both of these for like $6 or whatever the hell it was. I ended up having to pay like $20 because I had to buy them individually.
Aye.
Yeah.
Well, you should hack the net. DNS something. What?
I'm planning on it. So we open up issue 4 with old man Thor being carried aloft by the Black Berserkers back into his sort of throne room, and he's like, I've failed Asgard. No one's gonna sing for me, and I've lived too long, and this is how it all ends with just a sad old man. And they just dump him back on his throne, and he's like, what are you doing? Like, this isn't how it's supposed to go. And he's like begging for them to come back and kill him. So you kind of get the sense of like it's kind of a cycle. It's a bit of a regular dance that they do.
There's like 0% chances it's the first time this has happened.
This is Groundhog's Day, but hell.
Yeah.
Groundhog Day, but just real unpleasant.
Yeah.
And so then we cut back to Avengers Thor, who is talking to the mad god whose name is Shadrach. And he's like, I was the god of wine and waterfalls until the God Butcher came, and he beat me up and cut off my eyelids and did a bunch of real fucked up shit.
Yeah, it made me watch all of my pantheon be murdered in front of me. And yeah, it's bad. Like, it's all bad.
Wow. It's like, wow, that's really fucked up. And so Thor is like, listen, you have information about the God Butcher. Come with me and I'll protect you. Mm-hmm. And we'll go to the library. And so they go to the library, and the librarian has had the shit beaten out of him. And the Black Berserkers are currently lighting the library on fire. What?
No.
But that's where the books are.
Yeah,
but we don't get to find out what happens.
It's almost like only like fascists burn books.
Damn.
Stuff.
Interesting. What a bold call. And so we cut back to the past where Conan Thor has been strung up by the God Butcher, who is looking very unpleasant and toad-like, perched on a rock.
And hot.
And he's looking real hot as well. And so is Thor, because he's got the chains all like tight on him. And so the God Butcher is basically like, you'll tell me all about Asgard or I'm going to torture you. And Thor's just like, that classic eat my ass. And so he starts the torture. And so we then get back to Avengers Thor, who is currently beating the shit out of the Black Berserkers in the library. And he's like, I need to find Kronux. Librarian, where are the books on a god called Kronux? And he's like, you idiot, it's a planet. That the book that can tell you about it is burning right now. And so Thor like runs over to try and save it. And he manages to find the information that he wants, and it is Kronux, the Palace of Infinity. Which, I mean, it means nothing, but it sounds fucking dope.
It sounds so cool, though.
I like it.
It sounds very cool. Yeah. Meanwhile, at Kronux, the Palace of Infinity, things are not going so well, with, the God Butcher and his minions, killing a lot of people, and bleeding them all out, into a big pool of blood.
Yeah, it's all bad.
I thought Tim had just wandered away entirely.
I'm still here.
It's like, well,
hello.
Sorry.
He was too. This one was too intense.
I gotta go find my favorite. I gotta go find my DS.
The Kronos gods were like, man, I can't read anymore. All my favorite characters just got killed.
Yeah. So all the gods on Kronux are being bled into a giant pool of blood, and basically one of the gods is like, this is really bad what you've done. Like, we normally only use a couple drops to travel through time, and this is a whole pool of blood.
You feel like 40 dudes.
What are you even doing? Yeah, and the God Butcher is like, my dude, don't worry, because pretty soon everybody's going to be dead. Doesn't matter. And he then crawls into the pool of blood. And we then get in the last couple pages, old man Thor, is like, what are you waiting for? Kill me, finish me now. And he's like, I'm too old to fight. And then we get this zash, which I believe is a time travel sound as Avengers Thor arrives. And he's like, but where's the Butcher of the Gods? And that's the end of issue 4.
And he's also covered in blood from head to toe.
It's also covered in blood.
And it's very disturbing.
Yeah.
It's not great.
And if you think about it, the weird berserker things don't really bleed. So that's probably his blood. And he's full of holes.
Yeah.
It's gross.
Yeah. It's all bad. So yeah, I guess we'll just roll right into issue 5 because that's the last one. Because I think we'll get into our final thoughts there. So we cut back to where, Gore is wading out into the pool of blood and being like, hey, my master plan is going to come to fruition. And he goes back in time to the beginning of all creation and finds this old elder god who's like a big fat blue baby who's trying to figure out how to create things and is basically making abominations. And this is where he kind of monologues like, hey, everyone thinks these gods made everything, but they actually sucked and we're just making all this crap. And then life kind of came about how, science tells us it did. And, it's all bad. So he murders this baby.
This part was so fucking weird.
Yes.
It's real weird.
He goes back, he's killing gods, right? We're kind of numb to killing gods, but he goes back and kills the first god. And it's like, whatever, who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's just I've got a giant fucking elder god heart and I've just crawled out of a pool of blood at the Palace of Infinity because I'm the god killer. And it's like, what is happening? But also I love it.
Yeah.
As crazy as the other issues are, this one's bananas.
Yeah, this is where it gets buck wild. Thor shows up at the Kronos place. What was it? Kronos,
the Palace of Infinity.
Yes. And Palace of Infinity. TM. And saves the last one of their gods from the black berserkers. And somehow, I don't know, maybe it's because he's extra pissed off. He takes them down pretty quickly with his Kratum lightning attack. Kratum lightning attack. But we also see that he's like, where's the God Butcher? And of course that guy knows that he just helped him kind of travel back to the beginning of time. So that's probably not good for anybody.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, back in Conan Thor era, he's having his big conversation about hey, it took, he's been torturing him for 13 days or something like that. 17 days. He said previously he said the god of torture he tortured only lasted 7 days or something. So Thor's better at being tortured.
Tough as hell.
I love that line.
Yes. So he's they definitely set up that Thor is one of the most powerful things in the Marvel universe. I think that kind of gets undersold sometimes. And when people are like, who would win in a fight, this guy or this guy? And you're like, you don't get how powerful Thor is, do you?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely reading this book, I was like, I've lost stakes in the hit Marvel franchises. Oh, golly. Because he's so GD powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good. You actually see him get increasingly powerful over the course of this too, which I thought was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So while he's being tortured, his bros show up, the Vikings, and the guy, Gore, the God Butcher guy, is even like, what the hell? Usually humans are like, oh no, this guy's really strong, let's get out of here. Yeah. He's like, these Viking guys are just insane. They don't care. They're just gonna bum rush me even if I kill them. And they actually get in some pretty good hits being regular mortals. They stab him a bunch of times and shoot him with a whole bunch of arrows. And it's enough for Thor to get free for a minute.
And part of his whole goal is to kill the gods to kind of free mortals. So the fact that mortals are so into Thor, kind of pisses him off for a couple of reasons. One, because obviously they're into him when they shouldn't be into gods. And two, maybe there's an idea that Thor deserves it too.
Right. But yeah, he picks up his sweet axe and actually cuts the arm off of Gore. And they think that they've killed him. But, I mean, obviously, that hasn't happened.
Obviously, yeah.
Like, if that were its own story, that would be the climactic, like, twist of, oh no, these men actually do like having him around, and then he'd kill the guy, and that'd be the end of the story arc. We all learned a valuable lesson about liking
friendship,
the Norse gods. I don't know. It's a very strange lesson to learn, but
follow hot people and they'll protect you.
That's true.
That's the lesson.
Works for me, but
that's why I follow Tim around all the time, because I know he'll protect me.
I will for sure.
But yeah, we get
Thanks, buddy.
he in the Conan Thor is trying to murder the God Butcher and thinks he succeeded. Meanwhile, the Avengers Thor is dealing with the one that stole the giant heart, and they get in a big fight, and he gets wrapped up in the black goo stuff again. And then it cuts back to where it left us last time, where it's in the far future, and Avengers Thor and Odin Thor are hanging out, and he's like, hey, I didn't expect you to show up, but if while you're here, help me fight this giant army of evil minions. So they go into battle together, and that's pretty sweet. And then we're left with some mysterious, like ominous thing of Gore being like, hey, my giant weapon that they don't even know about is pretty much done. So I'm going to free the universe of having all these gods looming over their heads all the time. And that's how it ends, was like, his dream's about to come true. That's how it ends. Him being very happy about that.
Because Gore was like, I'm gonna teleport back in time, steal this heart, get some other bullshit. Then he kills the last remaining Kronux god, jumps in the pool so that he can set up his ultimate plan, and it ends with him being like, I've done it! But like Avengers Thor jumps into that pool after him, and that's when he shows up right on Asgard, and it's just like, what? Because like the transition happens so quickly that all the characters
it's
and
like
the readers
a
are
tiny
confused.
triangle.
Yeah. You don't notice it at first, and it's just like, fuck it, let's go. Because young Thor thinks old Thor is Odin, and they kind of start immediately. And old Thor knows what he looks like when he was a kid, so it like. I thought it was kind of hilarious how little time they spent on the transition from 2013 to 2013.
Yeah, and it leaves you hanging for like, okay, his plan is going off. Like even with Thor's trying to stop him. So like, what the heck is he actually planning if it wasn't this? Like, I thought his plan initially, because I didn't know this went into 2 volumes when I first started reading it, like this arc. So I was like, oh, his plan's going to be like jump into the time pool and he'll like exist in every place, or something like that, where he can kill everybody at the same time, which is kind of what it ultimately becomes, but like not as directly as I thought it was going to be, which was kind of cool. Like there's more to his plan than that. Right.
And he didn't go back in time to kill a god to make the present, worse. He went back in time to get the reagent, which is the heart of an elder god. So, they're not doing the weird time travel thing where like, I go back in time and kill you, or kill your great-grandfather and make you weaker. It's like, no. I killed your great-grandfather because he has a powerful heart. And now I'm bringing it to our timeline to do odd magics,
Right. Yeah. And it weirdly implies throughout this that like it's the version of time travel where things if they've happened, they've already happened. Cause they don't seem to be able to prevent stuff from having happened. It just, they're trying to stop him in their own version of the timeline, I guess, which is kind of weird. It's almost like they're from connected but different timelines or something.
Yeah. Like, I'm not sure if it follows the time travel idea where if, did Gore create a whole new branch of time where it just stops because he killed God Baby? Or, does it just not work that way?
Right. Multiverse stuff gets very confusing, especially when you're dealing with a comic universe that already has multiverse stuff of its own.
Yeah.
You could conceivably be dealing with.
I'm thankful that they didn't do, this is Thor from Earth 2012 fighting with, because that's like how Secret Wars kind of goes, is like all the other various characters
because they pull in the Ultimates universe and everything in that.
Yeah, exactly. This is like literally, no, this is the, main world.
So I guess final thoughts would be right along those lines for this volume, which was, that was one of the things I thought was super cool, what you were saying, where it's like, it's the same Thor between the different versions. And even, I think that's volume 2, but it keeps happening where old man Thor is like, keeps dunking on the younger ones, like constantly, which I thought was hilarious. Cause like, if you met your younger selves, you probably would be constantly dunking on them and all the dumb mistakes you made at the time.
Yeah. And it shouldn't be any spoiler to know that all 3 Thors are eventually going to get together, and they all interact in such a hilarious way. So like, nothing specific, but that just, if you thought that issue 1 or volume 1 was good and you want to continue on, continue, because all of the cool shit from the first continues on, and then it's better when they can both make fun of young Thor, and then young Thor can make fun of both of them.
Yes, very, very much so. Kieran, final thoughts on volume 1?
It's probably one of the coolest fantasy comics that I've read in a long time. It's awesome. The art is amazing. The writing is suitably epic, and just has like, it strikes the exact right tone. To, as you were saying before, like Thor is one of the most powerful figures in the whole Marvel universe. So, I feel like his stories have to be just as epic and powerful as he is. And, the writing and kind of the tone they really get with everything that's going on matches his kind of, power level, where it's like, it isn't just like, he isn't just tracking down someone who's kind of wronged him. He's tracking down like a murderer of gods who's seeking to undo the fabric of the universe and is traveling through time with fucking blood portals, and there's a 12,000-year-old library. It's epic fantasy in the most epic of senses. And I loved it. Yeah. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah. And the whole idea of seeing young and impetuous young Thor and slightly more even cautious, regretful Thor it's kind of like a shortcut, a cheat, a hack of character development. Instead of seeing them immediately evolve and get more mature, you see, 2 panels side by side of rowdy young boy Thor and more even killed reading a scroll Thor, and immediately it just works. It's like such a quick character development idea. And it's especially with like, it makes you realize twofold. One, obviously this is how they changed. And then it kind of makes you realize, all the Thors I've been reading in the past, or the Thor in the movie, the Thor in the whatever, is like this because he has guilt when he was a shithead as a kid. Yes. And so, he thinks he probably could have stopped Gore back in the day, but he didn't. Yeah. And so that's why Avenger Thor is the most sort of like gung-ho avenging of them, is because he's guilty. He thinks all these gods that have been killed are his fault, Yeah. It's almost cheating how much it works. So the young versus the old.
When you're saying that, it made me think, it's kind of like 18-year-old versus like 35-ish, somewhere in there, versus like 70, 65, 70-year-old
700
version of a person. But since it's Thor, you get to spread that out over thousands of years, which is cool. Yeah. So like the environment he in is drastically different, which also was a really cool contrast, because like the baby Thor, who is in like, the time of Vikings and stuff, it's all like barren landscapes and snow and just like that kind of Conan-esque environment. And then modern Thor's obviously like, you see him on Earth a few times and it's just normal Earth. Tony Stark's there. It's like what you normally are used to. And then he's also Thor, so he's off in space, like doing cool stuff in space. And the old man Thor is like kind of a prisoner of his own hubris, because he has he's stuck on this broken throne in Asgard, and he's in this never-ending cycle of battle that he, like, being Thor, he wants to die in battle. That's like how he's supposed to die, but he can't die because they won't let him.
Yeah. Yeah. So. And I don't know what the canon already is. Like, I don't know if he, in the traditional comic books, gets the Destroyer arm and loses an eye. I don't know if that's that, or if that's just like this world's version of it. But one cool thing I thought was, who is the main character of this? And it's obviously Thor. Like normal Thor, Avenger Thor is the main character. Whereas the other two are like very kind of not one note, but like in this issue, like Old Man Thor does not get to leave Asgard battle zone, and young Thor mostly hangs out in what will later be called Russia. Whereas our Thor is still like the main focus, with the other two supporting, which I thought worked well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to get into volume 2 next time, because we didn't want to leave this story arc half finished, and it does a really good job of having a 2-part arc if you have volumes 1 and 2. So, that said, I guess we will wrap up. So, Tim, why don't you tell people where they can find you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Tim Lanning. That's where I will shout about the various things I do, whether it's on the award-winning actual play D&D podcast Drunks and Dragons, or if I'm streaming on Twitch, or if a YouTube video that has a wonderful thumbnail art has been posted. That's what you will know. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It was a great time.
Oh, it was great having you. Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, Karen, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at Mr. K_Bennett. You can also check out my Dungeons and Dragons podcast. No awards just yet, but
you'll get there.
That is for Crits and Giggles. That's at for CNG podcast. Tim is on two episodes. Go listen to those. They're very fun.
The best 2 episodes.
I would agree with that statement. And of course, as Tim mentioned, you can also check out youtube.com/geekly, where you can bear witness to some of the finest thumbnails on the net. Awesome. Jonah, where can people find you on the internet?
Oh man, you can find me on Twitter at Spambot, where I post Garfield memes and also other random stuff. You can also follow the show at Inks and Issues, where we will post stuff like when a new episode goes up, or when voting is live on our Patreon, which if you go to patreon.com/inksandissues, you can sign up to get episodes early. Also, you can vote on what we're going to review coming up. Looks like it's going to be Agents for Harm, because, hey, if you're a patron and are at the levels where you can vote, please go vote, because some of you have not, and that is really skewing our polls. So please, I beg of you, go vote.
Is this the same 2 people making you guys do the same thing over and over again?
Sometimes, yes.
I hate that.
And we take suggestions from everybody. You can comment on those, or you can just tweet at us, and then we'll put them in I have a big spreadsheet going now of all the suggestions we've been getting of stuff to review. And then Kieran and I will kind of just spin the wheel and say, hey, these are the 2 that are up for vote this month. And then once a month, it'll be one that's voted on by people. If you really want to just say, hey, you guys are reviewing this, there's a tier for that. So get on that Patreon and make us vote, and also get us to that Garfcast, because I know a lot of people have been asking when that's going to happen, and I'm like, money, please.
Garf it up.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I don't want to be a jerk about the money thing, but we're paying for hosting, editing. We pay Logan to edit, and he's been doing an awesome job.
No, shut up. Who gives a shit what you're paying for? Your time is worth money.
I was gonna say time's a big factor. I mean, I work I work full time. I have a couple of kids running around. We're constantly interrupting us recording this episode. Maybe that'll make it into some bonus content. You get bonus content. Have we mentioned that yet?
Help Jonah afford yet more DSs so that his children can let him live.
Exactly. I need more DSs in this household.
Dad, I can't find the living room DS. Oh, just get the bathroom DS then.
Yeah. Oh, now they're asking me for Switches for themselves. I'm just like, do you know how much a Switch costs, young man? Get a job.
Dad, I'm 4. I don't know what money is.
Hey, you're in kindergarten. He knows what he gets allowance. He saved up for Lego sets and bought them. He can be good with saving his money when he wants to be.
There you go.
He's always buying these DSs, and they're all over the house. Anyway,
what a fool.
That'll be it for us this week. So yeah, join us next week, and we will get into Thor, God of Thunder, Volume 2, God Bomb.
God Bomb is such a good name.
It's so fantastic.
All right. With that, we will see you next week. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye. I love you.